Welcome back. This is Bandos Breakdowns. My name is Zain Bando. Thank you again for tuning in to this very show. Of course, as you know, if you've seen or listened to the show by now, my name is Zain Bando. I'm a sports journalist and ETB Network co-host. And as you guys very well might know by now, this is the show where it's me 30 to 45 minutes of my unfiltered takes in sports. You might know me on this network from shows like the MMA Outsiders, as well as various playback live streams that we do. And I'm also a sports journalist, just as I mentioned before, for a couple of different outlets, including most notably the Sporting News, MMA Knockout, and a couple of others that you can see across my portfolio from over the years. But I cover a little bit of everything and anything on this show. Really, anything that I think is interesting in sports is what I'm going to go over on the show. But before we get into the actual show itself, I just wanted to remind you can go to youtube.com/ETP Network. We're slowly but surely approaching 1,000 subscribers. So if you like the content that you see today, please be sure to give this show a like. Turn on post notifications so you don't miss any show on the ETP Network, including this one, as well as be sure to talk about it across social media. You can find this show on social media at Bandos Breakdown. You can follow the show at Bandos Breakdown. You can also follow the network, if you will. You can follow the network at ETB Network across social media as well. And of course, as I was sort of alluding to in the beginning of this intro, this show is presented by Playback. So watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience, from playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Please be sure to join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And with the NBA Finals concluding just about a week ago, please stay tuned for more ETB Network style content on Playback as we inch closer to the NFL and college football seasons. So without further ado, we're going to get right into the episode. We have a whole lot to talk about today, but before we do that, just wanted to also remind you can listen to this show and every other show across the network wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so much more. And then, of course, if you have YouTube Premium, you can still listen to the audio-only version while having YouTube in the background of your browser. So just wanted to quickly get that out of the way as well. But now we can finally get into the show. We have a lot to discuss on the show today. So just to kind of go over it, we're going to jump right into Zan's overview. We're going to go over what we're going to talk about. Before we do that, though, we're going to discuss the Stanley Cup final, which concluded a couple of nights ago with the Florida Panthers winning that. We're going to talk about the Caitlin Clark Angel Reese rematch, which ended in a very exciting comeback for the Chicago Sky, and that's really starting to become a fun rivalry in the WNBA. We're going to talk about Conor McGregor's toe and how that impacted his UFC 303 pullout, as well as some stuff he did over the weekend that I was not particularly a huge fan of, given his current state with the UFC. We're going to go over Dana White and what he hopes is going to be a long-term relationship with Saudi Arabia and kind of what he hopes for the regions. Well, that will be interesting to discuss kind of the things that he said at the post-fight presser last week and break all that stuff down. We're going to talk about Will Riley's commitment to the University of Illinois. He was the highest-rated recruit in program history. And we're also going to go over, of course, I kind of skipped over this just for a quick second. We will preview UFC 303. We're not going to forget about that. I was not present on episode 89 of the MMA Outsiders for reasons that I'll briefly get into in just a second. And we're also going to go over just the college football countdown, some games to look forward to, and so much more. But I would be remiss if I did not thank every single person that has reached out to me post accident that happened to me and my family over the weekend. We are thankfully all okay. So for those of you who were a little bit worried about me and thinking that there might being episode 10 this week. There isn't episode 10. I'm feeling pretty much 100%. So I just wanted to thank all of you guys that reached out and sent me wishes and some very kind messages. I'm still getting back to each and every one of you, but the goal is that by the end of this week, I will reach out to everyone. And I just wanted to let you all know before we got started today that I am in good spirits and I'm doing well. So now let's get right into the show. We at Zain's overview first. We're going to go over to the Stanley Cup Finals. So we had the Panthers defeating the Oilers in Game 7, capping off a crazy series. 2-1 final there in Game 7. This was just a wild scene. I mean, you had Florida going up 3-9. It looked like the series was over. It looked like ABC was going to be caught in a bind with over a week of non-content to show, and then all of a sudden Edmonton just played out of their mind. And in Game 7, they couldn't do what they were able to do in Games 5 and 6, which is pressure Bobrovsky, frustrate him, just kind of make him win the game all by himself. It was a very defensive struggle in Game 7 from both sides, and Edmonton had tons of scoring chances at the end of the game. He just couldn't do it. It's good to see that Matthew Tkachuk got a ring. It's good to see that Bobrovsky got a ring. It's good to see that Connor Verhage got a ring. I mean, all those guys were awesome. But I wanted to talk about specifically Connor McDavid, who did win the Conn Smythe Trophy after the game was over. And it looked to me from the ABC broadcast, and people can verify this for me if you were watching the Canadian feed, but it looked like Connor McDavid was not out there for the on-ice trophy presentation of the Conn Smythe Trophy. And I just wanted to say, I really don't blame him in many respects. I mean, even though he was the best player in the NHL, even though he greatly deserves the award, it's going to have to live with him for the rest of his life that he did not win this Stanley Cup. And he probably thought that, the Oilers had a real shot to do so. And, he's still a relatively young player. He's still a generational talent, but I feel for him in the sense that he's like, well, you're going to award me as the best player in hockey, but my team didn't win the trophy that matters the most. So I'm on the side that I really don't blame him for leaving the ice in the way that he did. I'm sure he was super distraught that he did not have at least one final chance to score the tying goal. But that's sports sometimes, and it's unfortunate that Canada, still has to live with this drought. The city of Canada had not won a Stanley Cup since 1993. Edmonton had not won a Stanley Cup since 1990. So there was a lot riding on Edmonton to win this series. Just considering that, for the city of Canada, it would have been one of the biggest sports moments in recent memory for the city. And truly, I just feel like, you're going to have those series sometimes where, you come all the way back and you fight all the way back and it just doesn't go your way. And that's exactly what happened to Edmonton. I think, there were a couple of chances where, they had guys in front of the net and either, the puck direction just stopped or they were blocked out in front or something like that. They had multiple chances to tie and or win the game and they couldn't do it. But from a Florida perspective, I mean, this is amazing. They've never won a Stanley Cup in their 3-decade plus history. And, they really looked poised and composed. They went back to, playing a smaller brand of hockey. They weren't trying to do too much. It seems like Paul Maurice really had his guys ready to go. And, you have to give them all the credit in the world. They had essentially been trounced 3 games in a row, and everybody kind of left them for dead. Like, and this team really do it. And I think being at Amherst Bank Arena, and being in Sunrise in front of that home crowd had something to do with it, because I can almost guarantee you that if this game was in Edmonton, Alberta, I think it would have gone a little bit differently, and we might have seen a different outcome. Just kind of moving forward there. So, the Florida Panthers win the Stanley Cup. Congratulations to them. The Eastern Conference is back on top again. Which for someone whose team is in the Western Conference, the Chicago Blackhawks, they're still a relatively young team, and they have a lot of different pieces to fill. But overall, this was definitely an exciting series. ABC got what they wanted, and Florida is going to be a tough team to beat. It's super hard to repeat in the NHL and, quite frankly, any sport. But Florida is going to be one of the perennial favorites. They did open as the early favorite to win the Stanley Cup next year, so that's exciting to see. But again, every year is different. You're going to have shifts and changes, and it'll be interesting to see where these two teams end up next year, and just the whole landscape of the league. I'm sure is going to change, considering that Florida is not a big market team by any stretch of the imagination, but definitely a good series, one to watch in a game seven that delivered. I think if you like a defensive low scoring game, that's what you got. So now we're going to move right along to a game that took place this past Sunday in the WNBA. We had the huge rematch, Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese, Indiana Fever versus the Chicago Sky. And, there isn't really much of an introduction there. And somehow, some way, the Indiana Fever blow a huge lead in the second half, up by double digits. The Chicago Sky win the game. It really does feel like a real rivalry at this point. And it's good to see that these games are really competitive, because I was kind of talking about last week. The WNBA needs games like this. They need names. They need talent like this. They need people where you're going to put asses in seats, if you will. And as someone who's been to the Wintrust Arena several times in his lifetime, I've never seen the Wintrust Arena that packed. I was not at the game. If I was, I would have told you about my entire in-game experience and et cetera, et cetera. But what I can say is it's clear and obvious that people who are either WNBA fans or fans of these two, want to be there and want to be a part of it. And that's all you can really ask for. You need games with superstars, and this is what the WNBA needs to do. They need to keep putting on these marquee games. They need to keep showcasing Caitlin Clark, which is what they're doing. They're showcasing the Chicago Sky every so often with the with the talent that they have, Reese Cardozo and others. They have exciting names. Are these the two best teams in the sport? No. You'd have to probably go over to the Las Vegas Aces and the New York Liberty. I'm sure that they would like to have a word too, considering that they're two of the best teams in the league also. But these are the kind of games that you love, and as someone who is a Chicago fan, who's a very casual Chicago Sky fan, you obviously love to see the Sky come out on top. But it's not going to be the last time that these two teams are going to play where the stakes are super high. So just as a heads up, August 31st is the next time that these two will lock horns again. It's back in Chicago. It's going to be a super exciting tilt. I hope to be at that one, because I at least want to see these two play at least once during their rookie seasons. And it's nice to see that that this game continues to live up to the hype, and it almost feels like they're playing it almost feels like they're playing every 3 weeks from the amount of hype that these two are getting. So it's nice to see that they're going to have another rematch, and it should be very exciting. And we'll see if the Sky can come out on top again. But you got to give both of them a ton of credit. You either like Caitlin Clark or you like Angel Reese, or you might even like both. The fact of the matter is that people care. People are tuning in, and that's all. That's all you got to ask for when this league is trying to grow at a national level, if you will. All right, now we're going to move on to the apparent news of the reason why Conor McGregor is out of his fight with UFC 303. So it was revealed on social media a couple of days ago. Conor McGregor finally came out and explained why he had to pull out of UFC 303, and it was due to a toe injury. Let's just say this: his toe did not look good. It was different colors. The picture was a little bit disturbing, and there are some people that are mocking him, and there are some people saying, "Oh, I never want to see him fight anymore." I'm just going to be blunt, and I'll talk about this more in my Zinger, but there are very few fighters in combat sports, MMA or boxing, that I've followed as closely as him. I've watched every single one of Conor McGregor's fights since 2013, even before he came to the UFC. I remember when he became a Cage Warriors double champion, and he was the biggest star out of Ireland at the time. So to hear him be as vulnerable as he was, that he's come into the octagon hurt before, and that, he's done things, for the betterment of the promotion and, to please the fans, and he's now realizing that his health is coming first. And the last thing I'd want to see, from a Michael Chandler fight, like this is a compromised Conor McGregor again, where he doesn't fight very well, and he fights like he did in the trilogy fight with Poirier, and he re-aggravates the shin, or he re-aggravates the toe even more. That's the last thing that I would want to see as both an MMA fan and as someone who covers the sport. I don't want to see that. I do wish though that the UFC was a little bit more transparent about this whole thing though, because if they would have said from the start that his toe was injured, I would have had no issue with it's at all. I would have had very little panic. I would have just been like, okay, he's hurt. For it to finally come out the week of the fight, the week of the originally scheduled fight, if you will, a week after the fight was postponed, is just extremely disappointing. I hope he heals up 1,000%. It's just I don't know. It's almost like I don't know what the public expects anymore. But I guess that's part of the Conor McGregor story now. Is you never know what you're gonna get with this guy. He's won exactly one fight in 7 years, so it's a really disappointing thing to see. But the fact of the matter is, though, is McGregor's still in the news. People are gonna keep talking about him. Still waiting on a rescheduled date. Hopefully, they can get that done sometime later this summer, early in the fall. They already have their schedule lined up and whatnot. But the fact of the matter is, though, is it seems like he's in good spirits. He cares about being 100%, and that's really all you can ask for. And if it's not Michael Chandler, then you got to move on and you got to figure out something else. The UFC needs to be very careful with how they redo this Chandler fight. If they go this route, they need to either A, change their marketing strategy, B, change their PR strategy, because the one thing they should have learned from this whole ordeal in the last month or so is they weren't transparent with the fans. They eventually screwed the fans over, who paid thousands of dollars for tickets. And we're going to get into the rescheduled UFC 303 card in just a little bit here, but I just feel like the UFC has not done a good job of just properly apologizing for this whole ordeal, because they played a huge part in this, and I don't think they handled it in the way that they should. But at the very least, you're hearing from the horse's mouth, which is Conor McGregor himself, that he is going to be 100% hopefully in the next 2 to 3 months. So hopefully that ends up coming to fruition. All right, we're going to move right along. It's sticking with the UFC into the rescheduled UFC 303 preview. So for those of you guys who don't know, I was not on episode 89 of the MMA Outsiders for reasons that I mentioned previously, but I was able to give the guys my picks for the main card. So I'm still sticking with those. We've got Alex Pereira taking on Yuri Prohaska, huge rematch from November of last year that took place at UFC 295. Still love Alex Pereira in this spot. Yeah, he has a quick 2-month turnaround, but this can also be said for Yuri Prohaska. He was not originally in camp for this fight to begin with. They were going to initially do this fight in October, and now it's being pushed to obviously June 29th, which is this upcoming weekend. So it's a good main event, but the card itself with the reshuffling is not the card that it should have been. I think Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopez is still a pretty good fight. You still got Ian Gary taking out Michael Venom Page. Ian Gary's obviously from Ireland. His dream was to always fight on a Conor McGregor card. He was so close to that coming to fruition. So hopefully Ian Gary does the Irish fans proud and at least gives them a little bit of hope that Irish MMA is still relevant in today's day and age. Sometimes you just don't know in circumstances like that. And you got to obviously hope that people get what they paid for. The fight is still the same price as it usually is. There was a $10 discount that ended a couple of days ago where you could get the fight for $10 off. So there's a lot riding on this event. The UFC better hope it goes well. I'm excited to watch it. As I just said, the main event's good, the co-main event's good. You have some decent names on this card. You got Anthony Smith stepping in on short notice against Roman Dolzid. You got a bunch of interesting fights on the card, but I don't know. I don't know if the UFC could ever replicate what they were initially trying to do with McGregor versus Chandler, which is the most disappointing thing out of this whole thing. What I should be currently doing right now as I'm sitting here talking to you guys is I should be previewing how exciting this McGregor Chandler fight is going to be, but unfortunately, that's going to have to wait. So, just as a reminder, UFC 303 this Saturday night, you can pick that up on pay per view with the prelims starting at 6 Eastern, the main card starting at 10 Eastern, and hopefully it ends up being a good card. By the way, something I forgot to mention, I used to do this a couple of weeks ago on this show. I was readmitted into the survivor pool that I was in. Did well the first week, did lose my UFC Saudi Arabia pick last week, which is why I don't have a fight for you guys to specifically check out on UFC 303, because I do think overall the card's good, but in terms of a lock of a survivor pick, I unfortunately don't have one this week. Hopefully I can give you guys a further update on the survivor pick in the weeks to come, but I can tell you that my overall UFC record going into this weekend is 146, 112, and 3. All right, so now we're going to move on. Also sticking with the UFC, we're going to transition to Dana White's recent comments at the post-fight press conference surrounding Saudi Arabia. So Turki Al-Sheikh, who's basically the advisor of all of the combat sports lingo in Saudi Arabia, is essentially um is essentially just kind of it's kind of mustering up as many ideas as he can. And one of the ideas, that he has is he wants the UFC to return to Saudi Arabia in the first quarter of 2025, and Dana White agrees with them. The Turkey wants, I think, 30,000 fans in attendance. He wants women's fights on the card. He wants a bigger card, which probably means the UFC is going to have to rearrange their schedule, and they'll probably end up bringing a pay-per-view to Saudi Arabia. A bunch of our co-hosts made a great point the other night that Saudi Arabia doesn't care about what cards come into the region. They just care about the amount of money that they make. I'm going to have to slightly disagree. Well, I think that Saudi Arabia, is trying to put on the best fights they can, and they realize it's the same situation with the UFC as well. MMA is a relatively new sport to them. They want to make sure that, MMA is done properly in the region. And I think if it wasn't for, Turkey saying to Dana White, we need more women's fights in the UFC. I want to see how Power Slap works, even though I'm not the biggest Power Slap fan. The tentative plan is to do a Power Slap event the night before. And they want to do some things to change it up. And they they want to and they want to ensure that that Saudi Arabia is a region that the UFC can continue to come back to over and over and over again. And that's one of the things that I think is important when you talk about expansion of the UFC is they want to go into markets and they want to give people names that people actually root for, whether it's in a UAE territory or not. And I think if it wasn't for him saying that, I don't know how Dana's reaction would have been. But it seems like he's very committed to Saudi Arabia. He's going back to Abu Dhabi in early August. And then, yeah, I'm excited to see what they do in this region because there's a lot of exciting fighters from this region. And, if they start bringing pay-per-views there, it's going to feel like the recent boxing events, which is always good to see. But this remains a story to keep following because as the UFC's media rights deal comes up in 2025 and so much more, I think that Saudi Arabia is going to be a big piece of the puzzle as to how the UFC is going to be distributed going forward. All right, we're going to move right along. We're going to transition into college basketball. So as you know, I'm a pretty big U of I fan as an alumnus, and the University of Illinois did their alumni proud. They got a very nice small forward guard type in Will Riley from the class of 2025. He had offers from the likes of Kentucky, Alabama, Auburn. He also had offers to go pro if he wanted in a different league. It was like an NBL deal or an overseas deal or something like that. So it's good to see that Illinois is building for the future and they want to get the best recruits that they can. He was the highest rated recruit in the history of the school. He's definitely extremely excited to come here from my understanding. Let me just pull something up really quick. So with that being said, if you go in and you look, so let me just read this really quick. This was from Sunday. It was a press release from the University of Illinois Athletic Department. Uh, by the way, I did forget to mention that he is an Ontario native, so I'm just going to briefly, read this here. By the way, he has yet to reclassify, but he intends to reclassify as I'm about to read here. So, according to the University of Illinois head coach Brad Underwood announced Sunday the signing of five-star Canadian forward Will Riley to a Big Ten tender financial aid, originally part of the class of 2025. Riley intends to reclassify and join the Fighting Illini program for the upcoming season. The 6'8", 180-pound star hails from Kitchener, Ontario, and attended the Phelps School over in Pennsylvania. And of course, Riley had moved into the top 10 rankings for the 2025 class, with his profile continuing to rise following a stellar spring on the EYBL circuit. He is currently rated number 9 overall by 247 Sports, number 10 by On3, and number 11 by Rivals.com. And this is just a brief quote from Brad Underwood. It's exciting to add a supremely talented player in Will Riley to our program. He is the consummate positionless basketball player who has all the tools offensively. Obviously, Orlando Antigua was instrumental with his relationships and did an excellent job leading this recruitment. Will has the ability to score at all three levels and give us another action player who can make plays for others and himself based on matchups. He is skilled, has great mid-range and float game, and extremely high basketball IQ. He also averaged 21.9 points per game, 4.7 rebounds, and 2.5 assists during his EYBL run. And then finally, he was named the MVP of the 2024 Basketball Without Borders Global Camp during NBA All-Star Weekend. So this is a highly touted player, a very, very exciting ad for the University of Illinois men's basketball program, and someone who can make waves right away in what is going to be a crowded and very exciting Big Ten conference, as the University of Illinois lost all of its production from a season's Elite Eight team except for Ty Rogers. So they're basically going to have a brand new team. So I'm going to be covering Illinois, Northwestern, Michigan State, and the rest of the Big Ten as we move closer and closer to college basketball season. But for those of you who don't know, I am a proud University of Illinois and Northwestern alumnus, as I went to undergrad and graduate school there respectively, and I follow their basketball programs really closely. So this commitment made me very excited when I saw it, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the future of the Illinois basketball program is going to look like. We're finally going to get into a topic that I kind of missed this past week, and that is the college football countdown. So we have under 70 days until the college football season begins. This might be one of the most unique college football seasons of the past maybe 30 to 40 years, just considering that we now have the 12-team college football playoff. So it's very, very exciting. There's going to be a lot of layers at play. And of course, later on in the show, we're going to go over some of the biggest games to watch. According to Circus Sports, there's a lot of exciting college football the first couple of weeks. I'm going to give some things that I think are interesting, so to speak. But just as an FYI, just so we're all aligned, specifically, college football will begin at the time that we're recording this. It'll be 65 days for Illini football and 67 days for Northwestern football. So a lot of exciting stuff to come up in week 0 and week 1. I'll probably end up, as we move closer into the college football season, I've got an interesting segment idea, which I'm not going to reveal just yet, but it's going to be my 5 biggest college football games every single week of games to watch, and potentially a couple of plays for any of you bettors out there at any book that are looking to potentially just make some side money and do well for this upcoming college football season, because it is going to be a massive year, a lot of parity, a lot of really good teams. So stay tuned for all of that and so much more. We're going to get right into my favorite segment of the show now, Zain Zinger. I'm very, very excited to talk about this. The first topic we're going to talk about is Conor McGregor's recent appearance at Bellator Dublin. Bellator Dublin took place this past Saturday, had a lot of exciting fights on it, including 2 Irish names on this card. We had Sinead Kavanagh, who lost to Arlene Blanco over the weekend, and we had Paul Hughes winning his Bellator debut against Bobby King in very impressive fashion. And Conor McGregor was there cornering both fighters. But An interesting thing to note, though, is that he was brought into the Bellator cage for a post-fight interview, and and in doing so, um, and in doing so, McGregor was asked about his injury, the pullout of the Michael Chandler fight, and all of that. I'm not concerned about any of the questions that Bellator asked him. But the big issue that I have with this is Conor McGregor at a Bellator event a week before UFC 303, a week before he was supposed to fight Michael Chandler, a week before he was supposed to put a stamp on the biggest gate in UFC history, potentially MMA history. I think it actually probably would have been MMA history. I just don't know if this is the right approach from someone who hasn't competed in the UFC in 3 years, and not to mention the fact that he's injured and he should be worried about his toe and he should not be worried about other appearances outside of getting ready for this fight. I understand there's contractual obligations. I understand he's a member of SBG Ireland, which is the same gym that both um, Hughes and Kavanaugh train at. But I just feel like it's kind of a weird look. Like you're going to a Bellator event, you're clearly the UFC's biggest star, and you're letting Bellator give you all the shine. Like to me, it was just a bizarre mix. And it's great that members of the media got exclusive interviews with him backstage. That I have no issues with. But the issue that I do have is going into the cage on live TV on DAZN and Max, formerly HBO Max, and openly talking about his return, in a place that doing the interview in a place that isn't a UFC octagon, to me was just a little bit strange, or doing it with the UFC media outlet. So just a little something that I thought I would bring up. I wasn't entirely a huge fan of this, and I'm sure that the interviews were kind of impromptu and a last minute thing. So of course he said, okay, I can't confirm nor deny that. But what I can tell you is for those of you who are new to combat sports and understanding this, and for those of you who are trying to learn from me, thank you very much. I hope I'm doing the best that I can in explaining everything that I know. But it's so you guys know, for the people that are new, that are really still interested, like who is Conor McGregor and what is this whole combat sports thing, is you usually don't see fighters promote fights of other promotions while doing interviews for other promotions, if that makes sense. It's a little bit of a tongue twister there, but I hope you get the idea. And yeah, I mean, obviously Bellator, didn't really make a statement on it. The UFC didn't say anything about it, so maybe it's a non-story, but just something that I noticed during the broadcast over the weekend that just made me very alarmed and puzzled. So there's that. Speaking of alarming and puzzling things, we have to talk about Ryan Garcia's recent antics. It's now coming out that even though his fight with Devin Haney is going to be overturned to a no contest, that his drug tests for Oscarine, have come back negative, and Ryan Garcia has been off the rails ever since these reports are starting to come out. I don't think it's been officially confirmed by the Athletic Commission, as far as I understand, but um, even even so, what's interesting about this whole thing is what I don't fully understand from Ryan Garcia's perspective is he isn't taking any of this like a man. He's not taking this on the chin. He's not, admitting to, any sort of wrongdoing. I think he's taking this the wrong way. He's mocking the commissions. He's mocking Devin Haney. He's trying stand-up comedy literally because he knows that he can't compete in the United States. Wait, I just don't understand. He's literally around my age. I feel like the people that he has around him are not guiding him in the most professional way. If I was a member of his PR team, I would tell him to stay off of all social media, take care of yourself, still stay in training. It doesn't seem like he's doing any of that. It seems like he's doing whatever the heck he wants to do. And even the stuff at the poker table, like him getting drunk at the poker table. Like, what are you doing? And what are you, and also what are you doing going on? I'm just gonna say it because it's the correct name of the social media platform. Is what are you doing going on X Spaces and calling out Sean O'Malley and saying, "Oh, I want to fight Sean O'Malley," but Sean O'Malley knows he can't speak to me because he's protected by Dana White. Why even remotely say that? Anybody can listen to any extreme that they want. He or X space extreme, whatever the heck you want to call it. You can listen to any extreme that you so choose. It's none of your business whether Sean O'Malley speaks to you or if he doesn't. It's also none of your business if whoever is running your X space can't get him to speak to you. It's only his decision whether or not he wants to speak to you. So I feel like he's being an egotistical maniac. He's losing a ton of fans, including myself. Is he a wonderful boxer? Absolutely. I'm not taking anything away from his boxing ability. I think he's a brilliant boxer. I think he had a brilliant game plan to beat Devin Haney. I'm not discounting any of that, but what I am saying is you got to chill, bro. You're still in your mid-20s. You got to figure out, if you can come back 100% clean, and if you can, come back and fight. If not, stay out of the way. But you don't need to do any of this, because at the end of the day, you're harming yourself and you're making a mockery out of the commission that tried to give you a license to fight. And now who knows, with his recent comments, he may not get a license to fight. So this is all up in the air. This is all a cluster, and he needs to really look in the mirror and realize that what he's doing is only detrimenting his career, as well as the people he has around him. So just something to bear in mind as we continue to figure out what's going to be the next step for Ryan Garcia moving forward. But just a downright travesty that he's even remotely attempting to do us some of this stuff when he knows the world is watching him. So just a real disappointing feat there. I know I'm running a little bit over time, so we're going to try to run through this stuff a little bit more at a quicker pace now. We're going to get into Zain's look ahead. So just a quick reminder, we got the Olympics coming up in the next couple of weeks. He had the Olympic trials for track and field, as we all know. Sha'Carri Richardson and Noah Wiles are going to Paris, so that's extremely exciting. And there's going to be some other fun stuff too. We obviously have gymnastics, gymnastics, swimming, et cetera, et cetera. So it's going to be a very fun Olympic Games coming up in the next month or so. So be sure to not miss it. NBC, USA Today, and Peacock is all the coverage there. So just keep that all in mind as you're trying to make your Olympics plans as well. Oh, but just know too that I'm going to be covering this subtly as much as I can. I'm not an Olympics expert by any means, but what I can tell you is that it's an exciting time, a lot of fun sports, a lot of sports you don't usually see, including boxing. So if Team USA has an exciting boxer that makes it really far, you better believe that I'll cover in and I'll try to explain, how he stacks up as a prospect if he chooses to go pro, et cetera, et cetera. I'll try to go through as much of that as I can, but just as a reminder, Olympic trials are going on right now. A very exciting time, and of course, the Olympics will officially get underway. Actually, and just the Olympics do take place from Paris this year in 2024, so it'll be very exciting. The Summer Olympic Games officially start on Friday, July 26, 2024. So be sure to please set those alarms for the correct times in the United States if that's where you are currently based, to make sure that you don't miss any of the action. Speaking of the action, I wanted to quickly go through the MLB current standings at the moment. We did this last week. We're going to continue to do it every week until the postseason begins. Starting in the American League East, the Yankees still have a bit of a comfortable lead, a 2-game lead over the Baltimore Orioles with a 52-28 record. Baltimore on the comeback is 49-29. We got the Cleveland Guardians with a nice 6-game lead over the Minnesota Twins. They have a 50-26 record, while the Twins have a 46-35 record. That seems like an interesting race. And then, of course, the Seattle Mariners, one of the best teams in baseball, have nearly a 6-game lead over the Houston Astros with a 45-36 record. Houston is just 2 games below 500 at 38-40. Moving over to the National League, which is where my favorite team plays baseball, that is the Chicago Cubs. Starting in the National League Central, we get the Milwaukee Brewers with a comfortable 5-game lead over the St. Louis Cardinals. who are currently sitting at 40-37. Milwaukee sitting at 46-33. The Cubs are an absolute dumpster fire. They find a way to lose another baseball game the other night against the San Francisco Giants, and of course they lost the game on a walk because, of course, Council and his guys found a way to lose again, which is what they always do. They lose to teams that they should beat, and they beat teams that they should lose to. And it looks like a couple of weeks ago they were doing well. They had won like 5 or 6 games in a row, and now they've just totally teetered off. I'm actually going to the Cubs game July 2nd against the Philadelphia Phillies, so it'll be exciting to see how the Cubs do there. It is a Illini night, so head coach Brett Bielema will be in attendance for the 7th inning stretch that was recently announced at the time that we were recording this, so that's a little perk. If you are a U of I alum, you can buy a special ticket, go to the Cubs game, and you could also meet Brett Bielema free of charge at Brickhouse Tavern, which is right outside Wrigley Field. So that'll be exciting for any of you guys who are Cubs fans there. Wanted to jump into the final topic of what was it saying? Wanted to jump into the final topic of it's going to be the end of the show, which is going to be the college football games to look forward to from Circus Sports. So Circus Sports put out a list of the college football games of the year to watch and some of the early lines. So I'm gonna go through them because there's a specific list that I want you guys to pay attention to. But anyway, this is all courtesy of Circus. So if you wanted to go, if you wanted to go and see kind of more so, or so what the entire landscape looks like, you can certainly go ahead and do that. But a couple of games off the top of my head, as I finally find the list here, we're gonna have Oregon versus Ohio State, which could very well be a spot in the Big Ten championship on the line for later in the season. You also have with several other games: Alabama versus Georgia, Alabama versus Wisconsin, Texas versus Michigan. How could I forget that one? That will be September 7th, one of the biggest games in college football all year. There's a ton of those 3 to 4 games right there, however many I just listed, pretty much make up half the list of what Circa has provided to the public already. And those are the games I would recommend people watch. Those are going to be teams that are ranked in the top 10, top 5 almost all year long. So just a couple of games to keep in mind. And of course, starting with week 0, I'll give you my 5 best plays of the entire week in college football. So that'll be super exciting as we get closer to college football season and so much more. So I think that's a great time to wrap it up. Thank you again for tuning in to episode 10 of Bandos Breakdowns again. My name is Zain Bando, and for those of you who need the point re-emphasized once more, I can gladly do so. This has been my unfiltered take in about 45 minutes or so on everything that I think is important to me in sports. So I hope you guys enjoy another episode of this show. This show is going to get a lot more fun as we get closer and closer to college football season. They have some potentially tentative plans to have a couple of guests on that I'm really excited to pick their brain and insights on certain things that I really enjoy in the sports world. And really anything that you guys want to see, I'm open to suggestions. My DMs are open across X and Instagram and wherever you can find me on social media as well. So really, the more feedback I get from this show, the better that I can make the show in future episodes. And thank you again to everyone that tuned in this week, both on the audio only side and the video only side. So that's going to wrap it up once again. And my name is Zain Bando, and I will be back next week for episode 11 of Bandos Breakdowns, and I will see you guys then. Have a good day.